G'day. Don't mind me, I'm just here painting away. Welcome to Famous Faces, Familiar Places. I'm your host, Jason Swain, and I'd like to invite you on a colourful journey where I'm going to come in and I'm going to paint somebody famous, someone from popular culture, and also paint some maybe natural or man-made, well-known landmarks throughout America. Each time I come in, I'm going to paint someone famous could be from any particular walk of life, could be politics, could be sports, could be entertainment. And I'm going to attempt to paint their portrait. I mean, of course, these portraits take me a little bit longer than an episode, but with the beauty of time-lapse, we'll be able to at least give you an idea what goes into a portrait, and hopefully it'll look like my subject. But anyway, a little bit about myself. As you can tell, I'm from the deep south. Southern Hemisphere. I was born and raised in Australia, in Queensland, and never had a background in art. I'm pretty much self-taught. Never took it seriously. Painted a little bit in school, drew. I was always fairly handy with a pencil because I was definitely no good at schoolwork. Spent a lot of time out in the ocean surfing, and obviously, you know, the lifestyle was pretty laid back. But I moved to the United States in '92 and took up art seriously in '94, '95, and one thing led to another. And some of my past portraits include former President Bill Clinton, crocodile hunter Steve Irwin, the late great Sean Taylor from the Washington Redskins. More recently, I did a huge portrait of Barack Obama at a local school. It's about an 8-foot canvas. And you might have seen me on various news articles or newspaper articles with the artwork. But this is an entirely new show, and we're just going to see how we go. But without further ado, I'm going to get into it. My first subject was sort of thrust into the limelight with her president coming aboard as being elected president this year, Michelle Obama. She became sort of the unofficial fashion icon of America, and I thought she'd make a great subject to paint. Very striking features. Of course, she's famous for the muscly arms, and she's got a very striking face, you know, beautiful eyes. And I thought she'd make a great first subject. So anyway, I've just been sort of rough sketching this subject out a little bit, delineating of the hair. And what I usually do is I come in and I'll start straight with the eyes, and the eyes are sort of the litmus test to see if you can do a portrait well, and that's sort of the whole character of the painting. But I'll come in here and I'll just put a little bit of, I'll start with directly with the pupils. Come in here and just delineate the pupils a little bit, just to sort of give you an idea what this whole sketch is going to look like. Come in here. Now she was born in Chicago in 1964 and graduated from Princeton, so she's got some pretty good credentials. And she was actually Barack Obama's mentor when he first started law. He came on at her law firm, and she was sort of his mentor, and taught him the ropes. And anyway, she originally wanted to be a pediatrician, but really didn't like science, so she went on and did law. But portraits are sort of tough to nail down, and if you get the eyes right, you're sort of halfway there. But yeah, I was raised in an area in Australia called the Sunshine Coast, which is a very sort of a touristy area, mostly surfing, fishing, and great lifestyle. And people often wonder why I moved to the United States. I mean, I sometimes scratch my head and wonder why as well, but I always had a fascination with the States. And of course, I moved here and got married in '92, and the rest has been history. But it's been I've had a great time painting, and but this sort of was a career I didn't really expect to get into, because never took it seriously, and you know, there's always the attitude that, hey, it's a great hobby, but you can't make any money out of it, and you know, it's sort of a love-hate relationship. I think I've quit painting about 100 times, and I've always seemed to come back to it. But as you can see, if you see my hand shaking a bit, it's not because I'm nervous, it's just because I've had way too much coffee. And I need to lighten up on the coffee a little bit. Now I'm going to come in here and do a little bit of the grey on the inside of the eyes, because the light is coming from her left side. So, of course, the left side of her eyes will be lit up a little bit more. And it gets lighter and it blends into that grey on the other side. So you get a bit of a sense of where the light source is coming from. Portraits are tough. When you're painting a portrait and you're working from photos, photos are very deceiving. You know, they trick you into using colours that you're not supposed to use, and you've really got to make your own colours up. I use the photo more as a guide to give me the features, but I pretty much put my own colours in there because, you know, most traditional artists will tell you you can't paint from a photo. You have to have a live sitting, which is fine, but it wasn't like I had Michelle Obama on speed dial and said, hey, can you come in for a quick portrait? You know, oftentimes you can't get to your subject, and you've got to improvise. So as I come in here, showing that little bit of light coming from the left, put a little bit of redness in there. We don't all have none of us have clear eyes, and it just gives it a little bit more character. As you can see, those eyes are starting to take shape. Then I'll come in with a little bit even of a lighter colour to show that light source again. Come and even put that little dot in there. Now that makes a big difference. See, it looks like she's actually looking at something. And apparently she loves Stevie Wonder music, I've heard. So, but her and Barack dated for a few years before they tied the knot. But I always remember her famous line at the keynote address. She told him not to. She said, "Just don't screw it up." So she's a very down-to-earth person. And I sort of like the way she's come into the White House and put a vegetable garden in and done all that. So she's really put a human side onto the White House. And great fashion sense. She's often, I sort of had a laugh at the media making fun of her recent escapades at the Grand Canyon wearing shorts. It's like, like that's really going to affect their job. And so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to finish off the outline of these eyes just to sort of give you an idea of her eyes. See, I'll go back to the studio and I'll spend, on a portrait this size, if I was working every day, probably at least a week. But, you know, because we're on television, I'm going to try and speed it up a little bit, and just to sort of give you a rough idea how to get a likeness. And some of these colours I'm using here, I'm using a very basic palette. As you can see, I've got maybe, what have I got, 8 colours on there, and I've already been able to sort of, you know, get these eyes somewhat realistic. A little bit of a light source on the right there. I usually work on a big easel in my studio, so I'm sort of adjusting to a smaller easel, but it seems to be working out fine. A little bit darker in that corner there. But it's come along just fine. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go away and work on it a little bit longer and cut back at a later stage, and you'll sort of see when I come out to the finish of these eyes here, it'll really sort of start popping out at you. There'll be a, here we go. But it's all about, there's a lot of blending, a lot of blending going on. And you can't be intimidated. I treat portraits just like another shape. Otherwise you get too intimidated and you just sort of freak out and you say, I can't paint this, and you never do. So I treated portraits just like any other shape. Anyway, so I'm going to cut away and do a little bit more work on this, and you'll see a little bit further on down the painting.